Thanks a lot to Twitter for allowing us to host the space. Today we're here with three guests on the final day of the COP26, and after 2 weeks of discussion, has finally reached its conclusion. Well, today, apart from, we will not be discussing the COP in general, but we'll be focusing on the energy in particular. So on the 1st of November, it was Energy Day at COP26. The European Union made a big announcement as they want to lead the energy transition, electrification, stop to fossil fuel. We recently heard the big announcement from China and the US that want to do something about the fossil fuel phasing out. So while we're here today with Taylor Sloane from AES, Lucy Hunt from the Lucy.
The World Business Council for Sustainable Development.
I'm very sorry. And Killian Daly from EnergyTag. As you might have imagined, I was not be the one supposed to be this introduction. Very sorry. Yeah, again, last minute issues. Taylor, do you mind going up next? And same question, a bit of introduction to you and your company.
Yeah, of course. And thanks again to FlexiDAO for organizing this event. So my name is Taylor Sloane. I'm the Director of Product Development at AES, based in Arlington, Virginia. So AES operates and builds wind, solar, hydro, and battery storage projects in 15 countries. In the US, we're the second largest renewable energy company. Fun fact, AES invented the concept of using batteries on the grid back in 2007. I like to say we were doing energy storage before it was cool. That business was later spun out into Fluence, which went public about 2 weeks ago.
I didn't know this.
Yeah. Some of the first battery projects were in the Atacama Desert in Chile. Interesting fun fact.
Nice.
So my job is to create new clean energy products that help our customers reach their sustainability goals, whether that's using new technologies like storage or new commercial models like a structured PPA. So, for example, in May, we signed an agreement to power Google's 3 data centers in Virginia with 24/7 carbon-free energy for 10 years, using a portfolio of 500 megawatts of wind, solar, hydro, and batteries. And then more recently, last week, we announced a 15-year agreement with Microsoft to provide around-the-clock renewable energy for its Virginia data centers from a portfolio of 576 megawatts of wind, solar, and batteries. So very excited to be here today to talk about the procurement of clean energy.
That's very impressive. Thanks a lot, Taylor. And for whoever is connected that is not yet familiar about 24/7 carbon-free energy, I'm sure that the next round of questions will be able to explain in more detail. But before we do that, the last speaker, Killian, do you want to go next? Same question for you. You already know it, so I won't repeat myself.
I think I picked it up by now. So yeah, thanks very much to FlexiDAO for organizing this. And it's great to see some familiar faces as well as part of the panel. So yeah, my name is Killian Daly. I'm the operations manager of EnergyTag. So basically EnergyTag is an NGO, mission-focused NGO, bringing together the world's biggest organizations, so the likes of Microsoft, Google, AES, Engie, many, many more, and of course, innovative startups like yourselves, FlexiDAO, to everyone who's involved in pushing towards that mission of zero carbon grids every hour. This is what we're trying to do. So yeah, why does EnergyTag exist? I suppose it's fundamentally about thinking about time. We believe that without thinking about time, we're not really going to get to a point where we have zero carbon electricity every hour on our grids. And if we want to use markets to do that, to drive towards that, then we need the right market instruments. So yeah, basically that's why we need hourly RECs or hourly certificates that allow consumers make meaningful choices, when they decide to source zero carbon energy, that is actually taking time into account and ultimately leading to the right decisions and right choices, and so that they're rewarded for that, right? Ultimately. So that is our mission. It's to define that instrument, this granular certificate that goes beyond the REC and talks about time and time stamping. So to define that granular certificate instrument, and then obviously to help build markets for that instrument. And how we do that, it's basically through three key factors. It's the our working group 1, which is about the standardization. So I know Simone and Taylor are heavily involved in that. It's about the consensus, building around the instrument itself. The demonstrator project. So we have 6 demos actively showing 24/7 already. So it's a technical reality. We know that 3 continents. And then finally, of course, working on policy initiatives and roadblocks that might be there and that we need to help advocate for removal of in order to allow this market to kind of flourish. So that's the intro to myself and EnergyTag.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Yeah, so we already touched upon the concept of 24/7 carbon-free energy, hourly RECs. I think we're throwing a lot of information at our listeners. But I think that with Lucy, especially, we have the opportunity of looking at the energy procurement market, energy consumption in the public and private sector at a more broader perspective, and sitting from the organization that you're sitting, listening what was really in the mind of CEOs today. So Lucy, where do you actually where do you see the market? What do you think are the top priorities, the top challenges, and where do you see also 24/7 be in the current market and the current challenge that we're facing?
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much, Simone. And I think, worth taking a bit of a step back because this is going out to the entire Twitter sphere. And so there could be people who have never come across this topic before. So really just to say, first of all, I think that we're in a really exciting place for renewable electricity procurement. So even if we were looking back a few years ago, there were only really a few leading companies that were setting targets or procuring renewable power. And now we really have an explosion of commitments. So over 340 companies committing to RE100, so committing to source 100% renewable power. That grew by another 30% just in the last year alone. So that's really showing the speed and the interest that this is generating.
Indeed.
And really importantly, how it's translating into action then as well, because as you said, we're on the last day of COP, and that's been a kind of common thread throughout the commitments are well and good, but that we need the action to follow through. And I'm really pleased to say that companies procuring renewable power is really one of the areas where we are seeing that translation and we're seeing real progress. So if you just look at the BNEF numbers, so Bloomberg New Energy Finance tracks corporate PPAs that have been signed around the world, and that's grown from around 4 gigawatts signed per year in 2015 and 2016 to almost 24 gigawatts last year, which, bearing in mind, that was a pandemic as well. So really, really big increases. And in terms of priorities, I mean, there are really the standard ones. So a lot of companies are looking at this as a mix of kind of reducing costs, meeting sustainability goals, of course, being a leader in the energy transition as well. But we're also seeing more and more that companies are looking to gain visibility over their energy costs as well. So really future-proofing.
Okay.
And that's more of a kind of current one, particularly given the recent energy price volatility, right? And the impact that can have on a company's bottom line. And that's where more sort of innovative models like 24/7 become very interesting, of course, because it can help to meet that priority by better matching consumption and generation times. I think maybe just to end on a couple of challenges though that we're seeing as well, because I'm painting a very positive picture, and I think, to be honest, we have seen a lot of I know, and that's the worst thing that we can say about renewable power, because I think a lot of people think that costs have come down so much, but in terms of actual implementation, we have a long way to go. And of course, if it was easy, we would be seeing all companies doing this, and really we are still only seeing kind of the first mover kind of chunk of companies who are actually getting to those really high targets. So I think education is a really important piece. I mean, it always is, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing sessions like this today, so we can make sure that people are aware of this opportunity. But also, I think a key challenge is on the options available. So as more and more companies join this movement, they're kind of expecting a more diversity of options available. Whether they're very energy intensive, whether they have flexible loads, not flexible loads, whether they have a lot of loads distributed over different markets, if they're small and have limited resources. So really companies are looking at how, kind of maybe being a bit more demanding to energy suppliers on what kind of models they're expecting. And I think this is really like three key areas which are being asked for. So first of all, options in less established markets where there's been limited renewable energy development so far. Or indeed, there are many markets where you can't sign a PPA, just bilateral contracts aren't permitted. Also simplified models. So particularly this whole like SME majority that we need to get on board. So any kind of less advanced companies as well, or ones who don't have the time. But I think really the most interesting one, and what we're going to get into now, I hope, is the options which show more leadership. So which have greater decarbonization potential, greater potential to also support the sustainable transition of the energy system. So really kind of having a systems thinking approach rather than just trying to meet your own demand, such as this 24/7 concept.
Well, thanks a lot, Lucy. And I think you really perfectly set the stage for Taylor now. You mentioned this massive growth in PPAs, of which AES is definitely a big contributor. You mentioned the increasing pressure on supplier to deliver. And you mentioned 24/7. So yeah, Taylor, you mentioned before these two really impressive deals that you've signed, that AES has signed with Microsoft and Google on 24/7 carbon-free energy, which was also the title of today's session. So now after that, Lucy gave us the broader perspective. Can you actually explain us what these leaders, such as Microsoft and Google, are doing? First of all, what is 24/7 carbon-free energy? Why is it important? And what is AES doing, and what do you see, generally speaking, in the space?
Yeah, absolutely. So I see 24/7 carbon-free energy as sort of the fourth generation of renewable procurement, which begs the question: so what are generations 1, 2, and 3? So let me just do a quick history lesson on renewable energy, right? So the first thing that leading companies did in the late 2000s was buying carbon offsets. Right, so I'm going to offset my electricity consumption. In the early 2010s, that was replaced more with renewable energy credits or guarantees of origin. So then the companies could say, no, my electricity is 100% renewable energy electricity. I'm not just offsetting it. And the third generation was more in the mid 2010s, which is actually I need to buy bundled PPAs, which means I'm buying the energy as well as the RECs from projects, because those projects are considered to have greater additionality. Like I'm having more of an impact on the grid. So now we're here. That leaves us now with the fourth generation, which is 24/7 carbon-free energy, which is that I need to match my consumption, my electricity consumption, with my renewable energy generation on an hourly basis. So that's a shift from the past where it was typically matched on an annual basis. And I just want to make sure and pause. Carbon-free energy, the reason I'm saying carbon-free energy and not renewable energy is because it includes nuclear and hydro. So it's a little bit more expansive than just renewable energy.
Yeah, I think it's an important remark.
Yeah. It could include other carbon-free energy sources as well, but those are the main ones that people typically think of. And so, why does it matter to go from annual to hourly? Like, who cares? And I think what companies realized is that I might be meeting my annual goals, but actually there's lots of hours where I'm using grid power that's heavy in fossil fuels, and lots of other hours where I'm producing way too much wind or solar and I can't even use it all. So this means that I could be using my summer solar hours to offset my winter night consumption. So I'm not actually really green on an hourly basis. It's more of like on an annual basis, yes, but it's a little bit of accounting. So I think people were saying, let's actually be matched every hour of the year so we have confidence that our energy is carbon free. And so, the key benefits of that from a grid perspective are it decreases the burden of your projects on the grid because you're contributing to what they call on-peak generation. So if you know the famous duck curve from California where you get these steep solar ramps, right? The idea of 24/7 is to help prevent having crazy ramps to have a more blended approach to renewable generation that matches your consumption, so you're not a burden on the grid. You're bringing what you need, sort of. So that's the first benefit. It's good for the grid. It's actually good for companies too, because if you think about it, I want to minimize my electricity commodity risk, right? I want my consumption to match my generation because that's a perfect hedge. If I'm super long in some hours and I'm selling, and then I'm super short in others and I'm buying, now I have a whole bunch of wholesale market exposure, and hopefully I'm not explaining on an earnings call to investors why I'm missing my earnings target because of electricity markets, right? That's not what I want to be doing. And then the third benefit is that it can be a demand signal for emerging technologies like energy storage, hydrogen, or demand response, or new PPA vehicles. It helps those technologies that we're going to need to get to 100% decarbonized grid. It helps value them today, so they can start to become commercialized.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's my round the world tour of 24/7.
And with an history lesson embedded into it, right? So,
with a history lesson, yeah. Checked all the
amazing.
boxes.
Indeed. Yeah. So after all of this, I mean, in the end, we heard like that the final mission is decarbonization, right? But like all actions need to be aligned across the different stakeholders that do that. During his history lesson, Taylor also mentioned guarantees of origin, mentioned RECs. So I think this is then the time to pass the word to Killian so that he can do his own history lesson on guarantees of origin and RECs, and tell us a bit why standards and attributes are very important in the energy sector for the consumer choice. But also linking back to what you explained us before of the work of EnergyTag, now with a bit of more context, is what you're doing, what you're pushing for, and also there with visionary companies.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it very much follows on what Taylor was saying. But in general, I think standards make life easier in all parts of life. We have them all over the place, whether it be phone chargers or what side of the road to drive on. The world would be a real mess without them. So I think that also applies even for things that could seem obscure, like electricity certification. And it also allows, standardization makes markets scalable. Yeah, we can, and this is imagine, electricity markets that had no fixed volume. We just traded different volumes. It would be very hard to get prices. It would be very hard to have the right discussions. So we do need to sing off the same hymn sheet to an extent. And I think EnergyTag is looking to do that in the field of certification, for granular or temporal certification. But not to go back into the history lesson maybe too much, but obviously the guarantee of origin, if we take the European example or the REC in the US, one of its major advantages is that it is standardized. I come from the industrial sector, an industrial electricity buyer. We want simple instruments that are recognized by everyone. The guarantee of origin gives us that. EnergyTag is working on some of the, let's say, modifications of that type of system, guarantee of origin, but it is vital to have a commonly traded instrument with proper standardization to make sure that you can build a market that people believe in and that isn't open to fraud or isn't open to double issuance or double counting or one company claiming a renewable attribute and then another guy next door claiming from the same unit of electricity. So it's a really important part of standardization. So this is what we're doing in our working group 1. You guys are connecting, every week and helping us build that standard. It's not easy always to build consensus, but ultimately it's invaluable to allow things to scale.
And I mean, we've discussed it in the past, right? But also related to what Taylor said, grid and like the ability, of like flattening this famous duck curve that concerns so many people. Like having these granular certificates provides price signals. I mean, you cannot realistically think that it's as easy to consume solar energy at night than in the middle of the day. So in the end, ultimately, that's to make people understand that when you consume and when you produce matter, and that eventually is what EnergyTag is trying to do, right? Like standardizing certificates, making more and granular, and create a market where you also have price signals for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, basically once EnergyTag has standardized the instrument, then we would hope that would allow for much more granular tracking of the flows of electricity, meaning that you're not buying or in a suboptimal way. That we acknowledge the fact that it is hard, and there could be very low liquidity during the middle of a winter's night in Europe when there's no solar and no wind on the grids. Then it should be really hard to source renewables. It shouldn't be.
It's the reality, It's what Lucy said before. The work is not done.
The work is very far from done. It's hardly even started, actually, in many ways. In terms of how we really treat these hours where we don't have those intermittent renewables on the grid. And yeah, as Taylor had mentioned before, perhaps some of the accounting methods that allow you to essentially shift just through an accounting system, wind from the winter onto a summer's night or whatever, that ultimately won't lead us to where we want to go. We need that instrument that gives the right price signals for 24/7 carbon-free energy, at every hour.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. I hope that we were able to inspire, at least get some people interested in all of this. Well, I think that we've almost used most of our time to give us the opportunity to host this talk on 24/7 carbon-free energy. Very much appreciated. If I might do something that is a call for action, let's see when Twitter, right, will be able to hopefully announce something on 24/7. Let's see if the sustainability office will hate me or love me for this statement. But before we close, maybe just one last statement from all of you. Like COP26 is all about looking into the future, looking to 2030. So if you would have one wish of like what 2030 would bring for us, what would that be? Lucy, do you want to go first?
Yeah, happy to. Thank you. Yeah, indeed, looking to 2030, and I mean, I hope it happens much sooner, but I would go back to my original comment of more options, just an absolute explosion of options if we can. So we want to see even more innovation in contracting structures to basically be able to bring all companies along on this journey. So 24/7 being the perfect example, but also aggregation models, also diversity in terms of green tariffs and utility offerings as well for smaller companies. So essentially options which will suit every type of buyer so that we can really jump from the first movers to getting everybody involved.
Awesome.
And yeah. So by 2030, I really hope that all companies are procuring renewable power because it is the low-hanging fruit.
And we'll be talking procurement 5.0. And Taylor's history lesson will even be louder. What about you, Taylor?
Well, maybe we'll be at 8.0 by that time.
Hopefully.
So I'll give a prediction and a wish. So my prediction is that by 2030, I think that 24/7 carbon-free energy will be like what RE100 is today, with several hundred members making public commitments and some of them even achieving it. Microsoft and Google have target years of 2030 for achieving 100%. So I think that's my prediction of where we'll be in 2030. My wish is that, and I think FlexiDAO will also like this wish, but that there's data and transparency to energy data on the load and generation side, right? So that companies can set and measure 24/7 goals. And also it opens up exciting things like that they can start to take, granular action. Like maybe I can charge my electric fleet during greener hours, or I can shift data center computation to cleaner hours. There's a whole host of things that get unlocked once there's complete data transparency on the load and generation sides.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. I really like this message. And Killian, no pressure, but you're the last one. So now Taylor also added a prediction. So now you're on the hotspot there, prediction and wish.
Sometimes I can steal a little bit also from Taylor and Lucy, I think, and build my response from that. But really follows on again from what was already been mentioned. But, you know, for me, what I'd like to see or hope to see by 2030 is that when we talk about, you know, carbon-free sourcing, or when we talk about green products like green hydrogen, when we talk about indirect emissions, you know, in that definition, we're talking about within that hour. We're not anymore talking about annual matching. We're talking about time-based and likely deliverable electricity. And I think that would be huge. You know, if that could be the new way of understanding renewable sourcing, that would be it would be really great to have that in the lexicon by 2030.
That's a really, really great wish that I just like, yeah, I need to subscribe to that as well. Well, thanks a lot. It's really been a pleasure. It was the first time ever that I was on the hosting side. I hope I was not terrible, except for saying the wrong name at the beginning. I'm very sorry for that. The World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Yay! So thanks a lot to the Twitter Sustainability Office again for hosting us. And yeah, really, really looking forward to work with all of you guys on the future of 24/7 carbon-free energy, but not only. And yeah, let's hope that we inspire somebody today, or at least share some interesting facts on this Friday evening, well, morning for Taylor. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thanks so much,
you.
Simone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Thanks, guys. Bye.